There are few events that illustrate the pointless destructiveness that the human species is capable of more than the Tsar Bomb. The Tsar Bomb is a bomb, most experts agree, 2000 times stronger than the one dropped on Nagasaki. It is able to produce a temperature of a 100 million degrees Celsius, which is more than the temperature of the surface of the sun. The blast created by the bomb is the equivalent of 8 Mount Everests, which means that the dust created by the Tsar bomb actually went into space. Yeah, yeah, that is how destructive the human species really is. Okay, so let me explain what happened. So in the late 1950s, it even seemed for a while that tensions are kind of beginning to disappear between the two blocs, with de-Stalinization, with Khrushchev finally like moving the Soviet Union in a more reasonable direction. With the de-Stalinization, it was the end of gulags, the end of the Great Purges. Even the brutal Korean War stopped. That's in fact that was the last thing that Stalin did before he died. He stopped the Korean War and then died the very next day. Also, Khrushchev then visited the United States. In this cult image, we can see Khrushchev meeting the icon of American culture, Marilyn Monroe. And it really seemed that maybe the Soviet Union is about to reach utopian communism, or at least Khrushchev believed so. Khrushchev claimed that in the 1980s there will be utopian communism. That means no more militarism, no more strong state constantly observing you, controlling you. And the Supreme Soviet in 1958 even proclaimed that the USSR will stop with nuclear tests, with testing nuclear weapons. And the United States then joined the moratorium because they did not want to be perceived to be morally behind the Soviets. But then, how did we end up with the Tsar bomb being dropped on the Novaya Zemlya region of the Soviet Union in 1961? Well, something unexpected happened. So Kennedy becomes the president after Eisenhower. And Khrushchev did not respect Kennedy in the same way in which he respected Eisenhower. Eisenhower was a cult general that defeated Nazism. Kennedy was just a soldier, or at least that is how Khrushchev perceived him. And the U-2 incident, according to most historians, actually changed the course of history. Without that incident, we could have experienced detente and denuclearization much sooner than we in fact did in our timeline. So what happened? In 1960, the US spy plane was observed above the Soviet Union. It was shot down and the pilot was captured. And the Americans then lied and they claimed that it was just a weather airplane that mistakenly entered Soviet territory, and Khrushchev was further offended by that bizarre lie because the Soviets have already captured the pilot, so they knew that it wasn't just a weather airplane. And that's how we ended up with the Cuban Missile Crisis. But just before the Cuban Missile Crisis, there was the Tsar Bomb, one of the most bizarre episodes of the Cold War. So Khrushchev, in order to humiliate the Americans and show that Soviets are still strong and a warlike nation, he orders these brilliant nuclear scientists, Andrei Sakharov, to produce the most powerful bomb ever in the history of humanity, the Tsar bomb. And some scientists even told Khrushchev, well, Mr. President, like, it's not really practical to have such heavy nukes, because if the enemy shuts down our plane before it reaches the goal, we could end up blowing our allies or half of our country. It is more practical to have smaller nukes, and then we can just drop multiple nukes. But no, Khrushchev said this is about sending a message. This is about propaganda, not about what's practical. And so Sakharov then continued to argue with the generals, and he pleaded them to make the nuke smaller, because Sakharov calculated that somewhere around 600,000 people will get cancer as a result of the experiment. So he managed to make the bomb smaller and weaker. So he managed to get the establishment to stop with their proposition of 100 megatons, and he brought it down to 58 megatons, 58.6 megatons. So that means only 300,000 people will now get cancer. And yeah, Novaya Zemlya was a place where the nuke was eventually dropped. And Sakharov spent the rest of his life actually arguing against nuclear weapons, and that's why he in the end received the Nobel Peace Prize. But what's absurd about the experiment is that even people in Finland, some of them, they lost their windows when the nuke dropped. And what's tragic about the nuke being dropped is that we do know that even some people in the Norwegian village of Kiberg ended up having cancer as a result of that. And the quote that best sums up this bizarre obsession of Cold War leaders with creating fear in the hearts of their enemies is that famous Khrushchev quote: "Let the 100 megatons hang above the capitalists like the Damocles sword." And Damocles sword is from Greek mythology. It's a sword that's supposed to represent death that even hangs above the head of the king. And yeah, so the Tsar Bomb was dropped. And Enrico Fermi, a cult nuclear physicist, said that the Tsar Bomb shows that there is no limit to the destructiveness of nuclear weapons. And he was right. Like, we as humans, we always have a capacity to make the nuke even stronger than it is, even bigger, even to the point of it not being really practical. And Sakharov felt guilt because of all the people that ended up dying from cancer, most of them in the Soviet Union, indigenous populations, in the same way in which people that mostly died from cancer in the United States were actually Indians. Yeah, because they lived nearby the place where the nukes were dropped in the United States. But yeah, at least something productive happened. As a result of the Tsar Bomb in 1963, nuclear testing was banned. Kennedy and Khrushchev ended up agreeing on that. But yeah, that's all for today. And don't forget to like, share and subscribe if you liked this video.